In 1999, a lighthouse 1 mile off the Oregon coast lost permission to be a cemetery. Not a cemetery beside the sea. Not a cemetery with a view of the sea. A cemetery inside the sea. The place was Tillamook Rock Lighthouse, but almost no one calls it that first. On the Oregon coast, it has a harsher name, Terrible Tilly. It sits on a black basalt rock, surrounded by water that looks less like scenery and more like a warning. The rock is small, exposed, and brutally placed. Waves hit it from every side. Wind scrapes across it. Birds own more of it now than people do. From shore, it looks close enough to explain. But in bad weather, that mile becomes a different world. For most of its working life, Terrible Tilly was a light station. Its job was to warn ships away from one of the most dangerous pieces of the Pacific Northwest coast. The story of its construction is already severe: men, storms, injuries, isolation, and the kind of weather that makes engineering feel like a dare. But this episode is not really about the 19th century. The strange part happened much later. In 1980, after decades of service and abandonment, the lighthouse was given a new purpose. It became a columbarium, a place to hold cremated remains. Families could pay to place ashes inside the old lighthouse, out on the rock, beyond the beach, beyond the ordinary cemetery fence. The idea had a dark beauty to it. If someone loved the coast, if someone wanted to be held by the Pacific, where else could be more dramatic than Terrible Tilly? Think about the promise being sold. No grass. No headstone under a tree. No quiet suburban plot with sprinklers ticking in the summer. Instead, a dead lighthouse on a storm-beaten rock, with the ocean striking the walls for the rest of time. For some families, that must have sounded perfect. For others, it probably sounded insane. And then came the problem that makes this story feel less like tourism and more like a file someone did not want to reopen. By 1999, the license connected to the columbarium was revoked after concerns about the way remains and records were being handled. The exact human details are delicate, because behind the weirdness are families and names and grief. But the public shape of the story is clear enough: the lighthouse had been used as a final resting place, and then the system meant to track that final resting place broke down. A lighthouse is supposed to be about certainty. Its entire purpose is to tell you where you are. The beam says, here is the rock, here is the danger, here is the coast, here is the line between survival and wreck. But the columbarium story turned Terrible Tilly into the opposite. It became a place of uncertainty. Whose ashes were there? Were the records complete? Could families trust that the place they had chosen, and paid for, had truly held what it promised to hold? That is the modern horror of Terrible Tilly. Not a white figure in a window. Not a voice in the fog. Something colder, a final address that might not be final in the way people were told. And the setting makes it worse. Because Terrible Tilly is not easy to visit. This is not a lighthouse where you park, climb a few wooden steps, and read a plaque before lunch. The rock itself is hazardous. The sea around it is rough. Access is limited and dangerous. Even if you have questions, the place does not welcome questions. It just sits there, offshore, visibly unreachable. That is why the story works so well as a coastal mystery. The facts are modern enough to feel close. 1980, 1999. Paperwork, licensing, business decisions, grieving families. But the atmosphere belongs to another century: a tower on a rock, waves against stone, seabirds, fog, and the feeling that the ocean has no interest in explaining itself. There is also something very West Coast about it. The Oregon coast is full of beautiful places that are not soft. Cliffs collapse. Sneaker waves pull people out. Tsunami signs are posted beside vacation homes. A tourist can stand in the same wind that once made lighthouse keepers count the days until relief arrived. Terrible Tilly compresses all of that into one object. First it warned ships away from death. Then it stored the dead. Then even that role became uncertain. If you want to call it haunted, you can. Many people probably would. But the most disturbing part does not require a supernatural claim. It only requires a question. What happens when a place designed to keep records for the living cannot fully answer for the dead? Today, Tillamook Rock Lighthouse is privately owned and closed to the public. From shore, it is just a shape, a low, dark rock with a tower on it, almost swallowed by distance. Most people who see it will never know about the ashes. They will never know about the 1980 columbarium, or the 1999 license issue, or the families who thought they had chosen the most permanent place imaginable. Permanent. That is the word that keeps breaking in this story. Because the sea is not permanent in the way we want it to be. Buildings on the coast rot, crack, rust, and vanish. Records get misplaced. Businesses fail. Ownership changes. Storms return. Even a lighthouse, one of the most stubborn things humans build, can become something else. A warning. A ruin. A cemetery. A question. And out on that black rock, terrible Tilly remains what it has always been, visible, unreachable, and hard to forget.